The first time I saw Alina Pace, she was standing in the middle of my bridge with a clipboard, a folding table, and a phone that was already filming me. I had not crossed onto her property. I had not crossed onto anyone's property except my own. I was driving home with 2 bags of feed in the bed of my pickup, on the only road that connected my ranch to the county highway, and 3 people in matching navy polos had set up a checkpoint on the bridge over Coyote Creek. The woman in the linen blazer waved me down like she was directing traffic at a school carnival. I rolled the window halfway and stopped. She did not say hello. She walked to my windshield, peeled the backing off an orange sticker the size of a paperback book, and slapped it onto the glass directly in my line of sight. "Sir," she said, "this road belongs to the community. You are not authorized to be on it." The man behind her photographed my license plate. The third one, a thin board member in a fishing hat, walked around the side of my truck with a tape measure and started measuring the height of the bed because commercial vehicles aren't permitted on community roads. I did not move. I did not get out. I looked at the sticker pressed across my windshield. Notice of violation, Pine Hollow Estates OA, and I looked past it at the bridge railing behind her, where someone had zip-tied a brand new aluminum sign overnight. OA Community, authorized vehicles only. The sign was bolted into a railing I owned. The woman screaming at me was standing on my property. She didn't know that yet. None of them did. And the part of me that had spent 30 years closing land deals, the part that had read this exact bridge into a deed 6 weeks earlier with my own attorney sitting across from me at a closing table, went very, very quiet. "Ma'am," I said, "I'm not sure who you think I am. I know exactly who you are." She tapped the sticker through the glass with one manicured nail. "You are the man who bought the Henley Ranch and decided he doesn't have to follow the rules like the rest of us. You are here to turn this truck around right now, or I am calling 911 and having you removed for trespassing." There it was, 15 seconds in, and the threat was already 911. I let the moment sit. I looked at her, and then I looked at the sign on my railing. And then I looked at the small concrete post at the edge of the bridge. The parcel marker, the kind you only notice if you've spent a career noticing them. The number stamped into the top read 4,471. I'd memorized that number the night I signed the papers. "Alina," said the man with the tape measure, in a voice that was trying to be helpful and only made it worse. "We should also note he's hauling agricultural product. That's another violation." He gestured at the feed bags like they were contraband. I am generally a calm man. I was raised by a calm man. I spent my working life sitting across from people who were trying to bully me into accepting bad terms on good land. And I learned early that the loudest person in a negotiation is almost always the one who's already lost. So I did not raise my voice. I did not get out of the truck. I did not point at the sign on my railing or the parcel marker at the foot of the bridge or the deed envelope sitting in the glove compartment 6 inches from my right knee. I picked up my phone. I took one photograph of the orange sticker on my windshield. I took one photograph of the new HOA sign zip-tied to the bridge. I took one photograph of the parcel marker. I took one photograph of Alina Pace standing in front of all 3. She watched me do it and her smile got tighter. "Are you recording me?" she said. "I'm photographing my property, ma'am." "This is not your property, all right. Are you going to turn around?" "No, ma'am." "Then I am calling 911. She lifted the phone. She actually lifted it. The man in the fishing hat had stopped measuring and was looking at her the way you look at a relative who's about to do something embarrassing in public. The man with the camera kept filming. I leaned my arm on the window frame. "Ma'am," I said quietly, "before you make that call, I'd encourage you to look up who you're talking to. Not who I am, what I own. Take 10 minutes. Pull the parcel records for that post at the end of the bridge, then decide whether you want a deputy out here." Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a second, just a second, something flickered behind her eyes, not fear. Alina Pace did not do fear. It was the much smaller, much more dangerous emotion of a person who has just heard a sentence she does not have a script for. Then the script clicked back into place. "That is exactly the kind of intimidation we have been warning the community about," she said, loud enough for the camera. "Mr. Calloway is threatening a sitting HOA president. Get that on the recording. Brad got it on the recording. I put the truck in drive." The man in the fishing hat jumped sideways. I rolled forward at 5 mph across my own bridge, and a leaner pace had to step out of the lane to let me pass. I watched her in the side mirror as I crested the rise. 3 people in matching polos, a folding table on a county-built bridge, an orange sticker on my windshield, and a sign on my railing that wasn't going to be there much longer. I drove the last half-mile to the ranch house. I parked. I sat in the cab for a minute with the engine off, listening to the tick of cooling metal, looking at that orange sticker through the dust on the windshield. They had stuck a violation sticker on the truck of the man who owned the bridge they were standing on. They didn't know it yet, they would. I drove the rest of the way to the house with the orange sticker still on the windshield because I wanted to see it. Every time I looked up, 1,400 acres. That was what the deed said. 1,400 acres of rolling pasture, 2 creeks, a stand of cottonwoods along the south fence, a working cattle operation that had been on the same family for 3 generations, until the last Henley brother decided. He was tired of mending fence at 72 and put it on the market. I had been looking for a place like it for 4 years. I had walked away from 6 other ranches because something in the title was wrong. I did not walk away from this one. I parked at the house. I did not peel the sticker off. I went inside, set my keys on the kitchen counter, and stood at the window over the sink with a cup of yesterday's coffee in my hand, looking east. From that window, on a clear morning, you could see the bridge. It was maybe 3/4 of a mile away as the crow flies. A low concrete and steel span over Coyote Creek, built by the county in 1962 and paid for, according to the records I had read, with a federal grant and a small assessment on the original ranch that had owned both sides of the creek. That ranch was the Henley place. That ranch was now mine. I had bought it specifically to be outside an HOA. That sentence sounds petty when you say it out loud. It is not. I had lived under one before, in a townhouse development in a different state, 15 years ago, when my wife was still alive, and we thought a community pool and a manicured lawn meant something. The board there had fined us $400 for the color of a wreath on our front door. They had threatened to lien our home over a basketball hoop. They had told my wife, 3 months before she died, that her medical equipment van, the one that came twice a week to deliver her infusions, was a commercial vehicle and was therefore prohibited from community streets. I paid every fine they sent. I never argued. I buried my wife. I sold that house 6 weeks later, and I made myself a promise that I have kept for 15 years. I would never again live inside a fence drawn by a stranger. So, when I started shopping for land, outside the HOA was not a preference. It was the first line of the search. The Henley Ranch sat on the wrong side of Coyote Creek, from a subdivision called Pine Hollow Estates. Pine Hollow had been platted in 1981, 96 homes on 3 loop streets, the kind of place where everyone has a coach lantern by the front door and an opinion about everyone else's grass. I had no interest in Pine Hollow. The ranch was outside its boundary. That was the entire point. What caught my eye during title review was the bridge. My attorney was a woman named Helen Weaver, who had been reading title chains for longer than I had. She put her reading glasses on her head and said, "You're going to want to look at this." I looked. In 1962, when the county built the bridge, the engineer's report described a narrow strip of land, 120 ft long, 40 ft wide, carved out of what was then the Henley Ranch, and reserved as a separate parcel for the bridge structure and its approaches. Parcel 4,471. The county built the bridge on it. The Henleys kept the deed. In 1981, when Pine Hollow Estates was platted, the developer drew his subdivision boundary along the south bank of Coyote Creek. The boundary stopped at the water. The bridge was on the other side of the boundary. The bridge had never been part of Pine Hollow. The bridge had never been deeded to the developer, the HOA, the county, or anyone else. Parcel 4,471 had stayed exactly where it was attached to the Henley Ranch deed. Generation after generation paid in property taxes every year by people who had probably forgotten they owned it. For 43 years, Pine Hollow Estates had been driving across a private parcel they did not own and had no recorded right to use. Helen took her glasses off and gave me a long look across the closing table. "Do you want this?" she said. I thought about a wreath on a front door. I thought about a medical van called commercial. I thought about my wife. I want it clean, I said. I want every parcel attached to this deed in my name, including the bridge. She nodded slowly. You understand what you're buying. I understand what I own. That's not the same thing. I know, I signed. That was 6 weeks before a leaner pace put a sticker on my windshield. I had not planned to do anything with the bridge. I am not a man who looks for fights. I had told Helen that day that if Pine Hollow ever asked nicely, I would sign a recorded easement for fair terms and a token payment. I would put the whole thing on paper, and we could all stop pretending. I genuinely meant it. I had said if they ever asked nicely. Standing at my kitchen window with cold coffee, looking at a bridge I now owned, I thought about the woman in the linen blazer with her thumb hovering over the 911 button, and I understood that asking nicely was not on the agenda. That afternoon, I drove into town for hydraulic fluid and stopped at the feed store. There was an old man at the counter named Ray Doolan, who had been buying salt blocks from that store since Eisenhower. He looked at my receipt, looked at my face and said, "You're the new fellow at the Henley place?" "Yes, sir." He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He folded my receipt in half and slid it across the counter with 2 fingers like he was passing a note in church. "Met your neighbors yet? This morning, on the bridge." He closed his eyes for a second. Just a second, then he opened them and said, "A leaner pace?" "Yes, sir." "How'd that go?" "She put a sticker on my truck and threatened to call 911. Ray exhaled through his nose. It was almost a laugh, but not quite. "Son," he said, "you bought the Henley place. You don't know it yet, but you just made yourself a target. That woman has been running Pine Hollow for 11 years. She fined Annie Patterson $800 for a porch flag. She tried to lien Tom Riley's house over a basketball hoop. She sent a letter to my cousin's widow, telling her the wheelchair ramp on her front porch was not in keeping with community aesthetics. My cousin's widow took the ramp down. 2 weeks later, she fell on the steps and broke her hip. He let that sit. Eleanor's got a board of 3. 2 of them are scared of her. The third one is her sister-in-law. She runs that place like a small country. Has anyone pushed back? People have tried. Most of them lost. The ones who didn't lose moved. He tapped the counter once. But I'll tell you this, I've been crossing that bridge to get to the highway every Tuesday for 41 years. And not once has Pine Hollow Estates ever asked the Henleys for permission. He held my eyes when he said it. You think about that? I drove home with the hydraulic fluid in the passenger seat and the orange sticker still on the windshield. I did not peel it off. I parked. I went inside and I took the manila envelope out of the safe in the back of the closet and set it on the kitchen counter, next to the coffee pot. Inside the envelope was the recorded deed to 1,400 acres and a folded plat map with 120 FT of bridge. I did not open the envelope. I did not need to, not yet. I stood at the window and watched the light change over Coyote Creek. And I thought about Annie Patterson's $800 and Tom Riley's basketball hoop and a wheelchair ramp that came down 2 weeks before a woman broke her hip. Eleanor Pace had picked a fight with the wrong rancher, but she had picked it with a lot of other people first. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after the bridge. It came in a cream envelope with a watermark and a return address that read Pine Hollow, Estates Homeowners Association, Compliance Committee. I signed for it at the gate, drove it to the kitchen, and poured a cup of coffee before I broke the seal. Some letters you read standing up. This one I sat down for. It was 3 pages on heavy stationery, the kind a board buys when it wants to feel like a law firm. The opening paragraph addressed me as Dear Property Owner, which was already wrong because I was not their property. Owner Item 1. My entry gate was painted forest green, and forest green was not on the approved palette for the Pine Hollow Estates. Community. 30 days to repaint. Item 2. My hay barn, a working barn on a working ranch, was visible from the community road and was therefore in violation of the Pine Hollow Estates Aesthetic Covenant. 90 days to screen or relocate. Item 3. A preliminary fine of $4,200 for the trespass incident on the community bridge. Item 4. All future vehicle access required pre-approval. 24 hours notice. A valid driver's license on file. And a $50 guest pass per non-resident vehicle. Eleanor Pace had signed the bottom in blue ink with a flourish. Cynthia Pace, treasurer. Brad Whitlow, secretary. I read it twice. I am told there are people who in moments like that feel rage. I do not mostly. What I felt was the colder, more practical thing. The thing you feel when the other side of a negotiation makes a mistake big enough that the prices just changed, and they don't know it. I was not in the HOA. I had never signed a CC and R. The letter in front of me was, in the strict legal sense, nothing. It was a piece of cream paper with a watermark. But Alina Pace believed she could enforce it, and belief, in a small community, sometimes does the work that authority is supposed to do. I photographed the letter, the envelope, the postmark, and the certified slip. Then I drove the half-mile to the bridge. There was a second sign now. It had appeared overnight. Zip tied to the railing 6FD from the first one. HOA members and authorized guests only. Violators will be fined and towed. The aluminum was unscratched. The zip ties were fresh. Someone had stood on my parcel in the dark and bolted a sign to a railing they did not own. I did not touch it. I photographed it from 4 angles with the parcel marker visible in 2 of them, and I drove home. That afternoon, I mounted a trail camera on the inside of my cattle gate, on a fence post, angled toward the bridge approach. Motion triggered, infrared at night, date and timestamp on every frame $200. It would turn out to be the best $240 I have ever spent. I called Helen Weaver from the porch with the letter on my knee. I read her the 4 items. There was a long pause. "Read me item 4 again," she said. I read it. $50 per non-resident vehicle to cross a bridge they don't own. That's what it says, When Helen says, it means she is moving furniture in her head. "Don't respond," she said. "Don't repaint, don't pay. Don't tell them what you own. Save the letter. Save the envelope. Photograph everything. Camera on the approach. Going up today, good. They will escalate. They always do. And every letter they send from here on is a confession." She paused. "Don't interrupt a confession." I told her I'd think about it. We both knew I'd do what she said. That evening, just after I came in from feeding, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go. The voicemail was 41 seconds. "Mr. Calloway, I am following up on the certified letter your household received this morning. I want to be very clear. We have been more than patient. You have responded with hostility, with intimidation, and with open contempt for the rules every other homeowner here follows. This is your final warning. We can find you until you lose this property. We have done it before. Don't test us." I listened to it 3 times. I saved it to 2 cloud drives. I emailed a copy to Helen with 1 line. Confession number 1. I sat on the porch in the dark, and I did not feel angry. I felt, for the first time since Saturday, something almost like a smile. Alina Pace had just left, on a recorded line, with her own voice. The sentence, "We can fine you until you lose this property." She had said, "We have done it before." She had said, "Don't test us." I had not even started yet. Ray Doolan called me on the Thursday after the voicemail. "Got a couple of folks who want to meet you," he said. "My kitchen, Saturday morning 9:00. Bring nothing but yourself." I drove to Ray's place Saturday at 8:45. 2 cars I didn't recognize were already in his gravel turnaround. The first belonged to Annie Patterson, the woman Ray had told me about at the feed store. The one Alina had fined $800 for a porch flag. 73, retired school teacher, hair white as a magnolia bloom. She shook my hand with both of hers like I was a doctor she'd been waiting to see. The second belonged to Dave, Ray's early 40s, construction 2 kids, the man Alina had threatened with foreclosure over a mailbox. We sat around Ray's kitchen table over a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint. Annie went first. She had brought a manila folder. Inside were 11 HOA fine letters spanning 4 years. A porch flag, a wreath, Christmas lights past January 15th, a wind chime, a garden gnome described as not in keeping with community character. The porch flag letter, the $801 was on top, signed in Alina's blue ink. "I paid them all," Annie said. Her hands shook when she set the folder down. "Not from age. My husband died in 2019. I didn't have the fight in me. I just paid." Dave's story was shorter and uglier. He had built his mailbox himself out of stone. The summer his older boy turned 10, 2 in taller than HOA spec 4 and wider. Eleanor sent a compliance notice. He ignored it. She sent a fine, he paid. She sent a second notice demanding he tear it down. He refused. She sent a letter from an attorney threatening a lien on his home and referral for foreclosure proceedings within 60 days. Dave tore the mailbox down himself with his older boy watching the weekend before the deadline. He's 12 now, Dave said. He still asks me why we did it. I looked at the coffee in my cup for a moment. How many people in Pine Hollow are scared of her? Most of the older block, Annie said. 2-3 of the cul-de-sac, Dave said. Ray set down his mug. Tell him about the audit. Annie pulled a second folder from her tote. Inside was a printed PDF 5 pages, with a state seal on the letterhead. Department of Real Estate, Office of Compliance, dated 2 years and 3 months earlier. I read it slowly. The state had received a complaint from an unnamed Pine Hollow resident, alleging the HOA was asserting easements and access rights it did not actually hold of record. The state had reviewed the HOA's recorded documents and issued a finding of concern, a formal written warning that the HOA was, quote, asserting rights of way and access, controls over property not within its recorded jurisdiction or governed by recorded easement. The finding directed the HOA to cease and desist and to disclose this finding to the membership at the next regular meeting. I read that last line twice. Did she disclose it? Annie shook her head. Never came up at any meeting I attended, Dave said. And I attended. Not in any minutes I've seen, Ray said. I memorized the citation number at the top of the page. Annie, I said, may I keep this? You can have it. I made copies. I asked them what they wanted out of this. I asked it directly. You do not commit to fighting someone else's fight without knowing what they want at the end of it. Annie said, I want her not to be president anymore. Dave said, I want my kid to know we don't tear down our own mailboxes for a woman in a linen blazer. Ray said, I want 41 years of crossing that bridge to be on paper, like it should have been from the start. 3 reasonable things. None of them required me to charge a toll, humiliate anyone in their own drive, or be cruel. I told them I would think about it. I told them not to mention this conversation to anyone, not yet. That afternoon, I drove to the county recorder's office. The clerk was a woman in her late 50s, named Marisol, who knew her job the way an old machinist knows a lathe. I asked for 3 things. The recorded deed for parcel 4471, certified. The plat of Pine Hollow Estate certified. And a written certification from her office, stating whether any easement of any kind had ever been recorded across parcel in favor of Pine Hollow Estate's HOA, the developer, or any other party. Marisol looked at me over the top of her glasses. You bought the Henley place? Yes, ma'am. The corner of her mouth moved very slightly, in a way that told me she had been waiting a long time for someone to ask her this question. Give me 40 minutes. 40 minutes later, she came out with a manila folder, deed certified, plat certified, and a 1-page letter on county letterhead signed, and stamped that read in plain English, no easement license or right-of-way of any kind has been recorded against parcel 4471 in favor of Pine Hollow Estates Homeowners Association, its developer, or any predecessor entity from the original. Parcel creation in 1962 through the current date, $46.17. I drove home with the folder on the passenger seat. I laid the new documents next to the recorded deed and the plat already in my safe. I labeled a binder Pine Hollow. I labeled a second binder response. I sat at the table. I looked out the window at the bridge. The light was fading on the cottonwoods. I thought about Annie Patterson's hands shaking over a porch flag, and a 12-year-old boy still asking his father why they tore down a mailbox they had built together. The bridge was mine. The HOA had no recorded easement. The state had told them so in writing 2 years ago, and Eleanor Pace had buried it. The receipts were not the weapon yet. The receipts were the foundation of the weapon. I closed the binder and I went to bed early, and I slept better than I had in a week. I did one quiet thing on Sunday morning. I walked out to the bridge with a post-hole digger and a small painted sign. Black letters on a white field. Private property. Parcel 4471. No trespassing beyond this point without permission of owner. I dug the hole on my side of the deed line, 6 ft back from the bridge approach, set the post and walked home. The trail camera on the cattle gate post had a clear sightline to it. The sign lasted 21 hours. I checked the camera Monday morning the way a man checks a rain gauge. The card pulled 5 clips, all between 3:42 and 3:46 a.m. 2 figures with headlamps walking onto my parcel from the Pine Hollow side. The shorter one with a Pine Hollow Estate's logo visible on his jacket sleeve, kneeling at the base of my sign with a wrench, the post coming out of the ground, both figures carrying my sign down to the creek bank. The shorter one throwing it underhanded into the water. The date and time were burned into the lower right corner of every frame. In 2 of the clips, the headlamps swept across the bridge railing and caught for half a second. But unmistakably, Eleanor Pace standing on the Pine Hollow side with her hands on her hips, watching. I copied the clips to 2 cloud drives. I emailed them to Helen with 1 line. Confession number 2. She replied in 4 minutes. Don't pull the camera. Don't say anything. Wait for them to escalate further. They will, they did. Faster than I expected. The deputy's cruiser came up my driveway at 2:20 that afternoon. He was in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered, with the careful courtesy of a real cop who isn't yet sure what kind of call he's walked into. Nameplate read Garza. Mr. Calloway, I'm responding to a complaint from a Mrs. Eleanor Pace, president of the Pine Hollow Estates HOA. She reports you've been harassing residents and blocking community access. She's asking us to cite you and remove obstructions you've placed on community property. I nodded. Deputy, before you write anything, would you walk to that bridge with me? It's a 1/4 mile. He looked at me for a moment. Some cops would have refused. He didn't. I let the land talk on the way down. At the bridge, I pointed in order, at the 2 HOA signs zip-tied to my railing, the parcel marker stamped 4,471, the empty hole where my sign had stood the day before, and the broken stub of post visible in the creek bed below. Then, I queued up the trail camera footage on my phone and let him watch. His hand drifted to his radio somewhere during the 3rd clip. He keyed it, talked low, listened, talked again. When the clips ended, he handed me back the phone. Sir, do you have property documents? In the kitchen, we walked back. He read the deed. He read the plat. He read Marisol's no easement letter. He read it twice. He photographed all 3 on his own phone with my permission, and his body cam running. His face had gone from courteous wary to something quieter and more set. His radio crackled a voice asking his status. I'm at the property, Garza said. The complainant's story is not matching the documents on site. Hold on the citation. I refilled his coffee. Eleanor Pace arrived 11 minutes later. She came up the driveway in her Lexus, parked across 2 of my gravel turnarounds, and got out of the car without closing the door. She was already speaking. Deputy, I want him cited, and I want him cited now. This man has been harassing my residents. He has been making veiled threats. He has been refusing to cooperate with a duly constituted homeowners association. Garza let her finish. He let her finish in a way that, if you have spent any time around real cops, you recognize as a kindness he was extending to her one last time. When she was done, he said, Mrs. Pace, I reviewed property records and trail camera footage showing 2 of your board members removing a sign of his on his own parcel at 3:45 a.m. yesterday. I've reviewed a certified statement from the county recorder that says Pine Hollow Estates has no recorded easement across parcel 4,471. I'm not citing Mr. Calloway. I'm advising you that what your board members did appears on its face to be criminal trespass and vandalism, and Mr. Calloway is well within his rights to press charges. Eleanor's mouth opened. It stayed open. I'd recommend, Garza added, that you not return to this gentleman's property without his permission, and not direct anyone else to do so. Are we clear? Madam, yes. Small Garza turned to me. Mr. Calloway, would you like to press charges today? I thought about Annie Patterson's hands. I thought about a 12-year-old boy's mailbox. Not today, deputy. I'd like a copy of your report and your body cam footage through proper channel. That's all. You'll have both. She drove away without closing the Lexus door until she was halfway down the drive. The certified letter from Eleanor's attorney arrived on Wednesday. Hartwick and Stowe, attorneys at law. 2 paragraphs. The relevant sentence was the last. Please be advised that Pine Hollow Estates HOA hereby provides notice of its intent to assert prescriptive easement, rights over the access bridge serving the subdivision based on continuous and open use of said access for a period, exceeding the statutory minimum. Prescriptive easement. Plain English. We used your bridge long enough that we get to keep using it forever. Deed or no deed. The doctrine is real. It is also narrow. It requires use that is adverse open continuous, and without permission. The HOA's own state audit 2 years ago said in writing they had been asserting unrecorded rights. Their own minutes were silent on permission. The Henley family had let people cross that bridge for 41 years out of plain country kindness, which is the legal opposite of adverse. Prescriptive easement was not a sword against me. It was a confession in the shape of a sword. I poured a coffee. I opened the response binder to a fresh tab. I labeled it Confession Number 3. The community-wide email went out the following Monday at 7:14 a.m. A neighbor of Annie's, a woman named Doris, forwarded it to me by 7:21. The subject line read Urgent Special Meeting to secure Pine Hollow Community Access Wednesday, 7:00 p.m. The body was 4 paragraphs of a leaner pace at her most florid. A hostile, out-of-area landowner threatening to isolate Pine Hollow estates from county roads. Attempts to extort the membership for use of historic community access infrastructure. Veiled physical threats against board members. The HOA's attorneys had established the legal foundation for prescriptive easement and were prepared to file suit. Immediately, the membership was asked to authorize a $60,000 legal war chest at Wednesday's meeting. I was named in the 3rd paragraph. Mr. Alan Calloway, bold, underlined. I forwarded it to Helen with no subject line. She wrote back in 7 minutes. Go to the meeting. Sit in the back. Don't speak unless she calls on you. If she calls on you, stand. Don't go to the podium. Bring the deed. Bring the plat. Bring nothing else. Keep the rest in your pocket. Make her ask, I said. All right. Wednesday at 6:40 I drove to the Pine Hollow Clubhouse. The parking lot was full. Eleanor's email had pulled in close to 90 households. 93% of the subdivision. Annie Patterson saved me a seat in the back row on the aisle and did not wave. Dave Ray's was 3 rows up on the other side. Ray was leaning against the back wall, the way old ranchers lean against walls when they expect a fight and intend to enjoy it. Eleanor was at the podium in the same linen blazer. She gave the room 40 minutes of the timeline of escalating hostility. She showed them a photograph of my orange-stickered windshield as proof of noncompliance. She showed them a photograph of the empty hole where my private property sign had stood, framed as me having removed signage from community infrastructure. She did not show them what had happened at 3:45 in the morning the day after. She assured the room that prescriptive easement was clearly established and the suit was a formality. Some residents nodded. Some looked down at their hands. Annie did not move. Then she explained the war chest $60,000. Equal shares, approximately $625 per household payable within 90 days. She said payable within 90 days, the way other people say. I love you. A man 2 rows in front of me mid-60s, the kind of retired guy who keeps his lawn with a level, raised his hand. Eleanor, before we vote, has anyone actually talked to this man about a recorded easement? About a normal arrangement? Eleanor smiled at him the way you smile at a child who has interrupted an adult. Conversation. We have tried to engage Mr. Calloway Frank. He has refused every overture. He has made physical threats. He has weaponized law enforcement against this board. He is not a reasonable actor. Frank sat back down slowly. He did not look convinced. He also did not look like he was going to stand up again. That was when she did it. She stopped pacing mid-step, and her eyes traveled the rows until they found me. The whole room turned with her gaze. Mr. Calloway. Her voice carried beautifully. She had practiced, you came, how brave. I don't suppose you'd care to stand and explain to your neighbors, to the families whose children walk that bridge to the school bus, to the elderly couples who depend on that road for ambulance access, why you believe you are entitled to hold this entire community hostage for personal profit. Not for Mac. 90 heads turned toward me. I sat still for a count of 3. I let her have the silence. The person who is comfortable in silence is the one running the room, I stood up. I did not walk to the podium. I did not raise my voice. I held a single manila envelope in my left hand. "Madam President," I said. The room got very quiet. Before this community votes to spend $60,000 on a lawsuit, before any family in this room writes a check for $625 on the strength of what you've told them tonight, I'd like to introduce a parcel number. I did not say what the parcel number was, not yet. I just held up the envelope. Plain manila, closed. Eleanor's smile, which had been wide and sharp at the corners, did something I had been waiting 2 weeks to see. It froze. Not faltered, froze. Like a photograph of a smile rather than a smile. The room felt it. Nobody moved beside me. Annie reached over and put her hand, very lightly, on top of mine. Frank turned all the way around. Ray uncrossed his arms. Eleanor recovered fast. She always did. "Mr. Calloway, this is not a forum for Madam President. You invited me to stand." I'm standing. Somebody, somewhere in the middle rows, made a small sound that was almost a laugh and almost a cough. It was the first crack. The HOA's attorney, a man in a charcoal suit, seated to Eleanor's left, leaned over and whispered to her sharp. I could read 3 of the words on his lips. "Don't vote tonight." I lowered the envelope. "I'd be glad to share what's in this envelope with the membership tonight. Or the board can adjourn the vote, take 10 minutes, and review it privately. I'd recommend the second one, for the community's sake." Frank turned back toward Eleanor. So did Annie. So did the row behind us. So did the row behind that, 90 faces slowly, in a wave that started from the back of the room and traveled forward, turned to wait for Eleanor Pace to answer the man she had just called an opportunist. She did not answer for a long time. The clock on the wall ticked 4 times before she opened her mouth. This is highly irregular. Madam President, I'm only here because you called me out by name. I can sit back down." I did not sit back down. The attorney whispered again, sharper Eleanor's face, and I will say this only once, because I take no joy in it, was the face of a person who has just understood, in a single breath, that the room she has run for 11 years no longer belongs to her. She did not call the vote. We will table the Worcester authorization to a future meeting, pending review of new information," Frank said loudly. "Seconded," Ray said from the back wall. Carried, the room moved, not loud, not a riot. Just the quiet, audible shift of 90 people deciding, in the same 5 seconds, that something had changed and they were no longer afraid of being the first to notice. I sat down. Annie's hand was still on mine. Her hand was steady. I had not opened the envelope yet. I would open it next. I walked to the front of the room. I did not approach the podium. I stopped at the small folding table to its left where the projector cart sat, and the HOA's laptop was already open on a slideshow titled "Securing Our Community Access." I set the manila envelope down on the table, slid out 3 documents, and laid them in a row with the same care I would have used setting a place at dinner. "Madam President, members of Pine Hollow Estates, 90 faces." The attorney in the charcoal suit had stopped whispering. "This is the bridge." I tapped the plat map. Yellow highlighter ran along 120 ft of bridge and its approaches. "This is the parcel 4471. I tapped the deed. "This is who owns it." I let the silence breathe for a count of 2. It is not the HOA. It has never been the HOA. A row of older residents leaned forward together, the way people lean toward a doctor about to deliver news. Eleanor opened her mouth. The attorney, without looking at her, put a hand on her wrist. "In 1962, the county built that bridge on a 120 ft strip carved out of the original Henley Ranch as a separate parcel. The Henleys kept the deed. In 1981, the Pine Hollow developer drew his subdivision boundary along the bank of Coyote Creek. The bridge is on the other side of the boundary. The bridge has never been part of Pine Hollow." I picked up the 3rd document. This is a certified statement from the county recorder dated 9 days ago. It says, in plain English, that no easement license or right-of-way of any kind has been recorded across parcel 4471 in favor of the Pine Hollow Estates HOA, its developer, or any other party from 1962 through this morning. I set the letter down on top of the deed. That means for 43 years, this community has crossed a private bridge on the assumption that the assumption was enough. It was until the Henleys sold. Frank, in the second row, exhaled audibly. Annie in the back did not exhale at all. Eleanor stood up. Mr. Calloway, this is exactly the kind of Madam President. The attorney's hand tightened on her wrist. He spoke quietly, but the room heard it. Sit down, she sat. I let the room have a moment. I needed them to feel it land, not the receipt. The implication that the woman who just asked them to write checks for $625 apiece had been wrong about the most basic fact of her own lawsuit. Some of you may be wondering fairly why nobody caught this before. The answer is somebody did. I lifted the fourth document out of the envelope. 2 years and 3 months ago, the state, after receiving a complaint from a Pine Hollow resident, issued this finding to your board. It directs the HOA, quote, to cease and desist, asserting access rights not supported by recorded instrument, and to disclose this finding to the membership at the next regular meeting. I lowered the page. I have read 3 years of meeting minutes. This finding was never disclosed. 3 rows shifted at once. The sound of bodies moving, when a single thought has reached all of them simultaneously. A woman in the 4th row said quietly, Eleanor, is that true? Eleanor said nothing. The attorney slid 6 inches sideways on the bench. I took the trail camera SD card out of my shirt pocket and held it up. 2 weeks ago, I posted a small wooden sign on my own land, 6 feet back from the bridge, reading private property, parcel 4,471. It was polite. It was legal. It lasted 21 hours. I unplugged the HOA's laptop and plugged in mine. The clip came up on the screen behind Eleanor. 3:45 a.m. 2 figures with headlamps, the taller wearing a Pine Hollow Estates board jacket, the wrench, the post coming out of the ground, the walk to the creek bank, the underhanded throw, the infrared caught Eleanor on the bridge railing in the second to last frame, hands on her hips watching. The clubhouse made a sound I had not heard before from any group of people in my life. Not a gasp, not a cry. A long, quiet no, spoken by 40 mouths at once. I let the clip loop twice. I paused on the frame of Eleanor on the railing and left it there. I have a deputy's report from the afternoon. Those signs were destroyed. I have body cam footage. I'm not going to play either tonight. I don't need to. I picked up my phone. One more thing, 41 seconds. I pressed speaker. Eleanor's voicemail filled the clubhouse. Mr. Calloway, I am following up on the certified letter your household received this morning. We have been more than patient. You have responded with hostility, with intimidation, and with open contempt for the rules every other homeowner here follows. This is your final warning. We can fine you until you lose this property. We have done it before. Don't test us. The recording ended. The phrase, we have done it before, hung in the air like a smell. Annie, in the back row, made a small sound and put both hands over her face. A man in the front row stood up. He looked at the attorney. How many of us have paid fines to this woman? Half the room raised their hands. He turned to Eleanor. How many of those fines were for things you had no authority to fine us for? Eleanor said nothing. The attorney leaned in, and I could read his lips. Don't speak another word. Frank stood. I move that this membership take an immediate vote of no confidence in the president and treasurer of this association. A woman at the back called second. Ray against the wall said carried. I held up one hand. Before you vote, I am not your enemy. I have no interest in cutting this community off from a county road. I have no interest in charging your families to take their kids to school. What I am not willing to do is leave 120 FT of my own land, unprotected from a board that has shown me in writing, in voicemail on camera, and in this room tonight that it cannot be trusted to act in good faith. I looked at Eleanor. For 43 years, this community has crossed my bridge on the Henley's good faith. I will extend that same good faith, but to a board that earns it, in writing, by recorded easement, signed by a board that does not include the woman who threatened to take my home. I gathered my 4 documents back into the envelope and walked to my seat beside Annie. The vote took 43 minutes. Paper ballot because Frank insisted. 67 for no confidence. 4 against. 19 abstentions. Almost all of them looking at the floor. Eleanor Pace was no longer the president of Pine Hollow, Estates Homeowners Association. The attorney walked her out at 9:48 p.m. She did not look at me on the way past. Annie squeezed my hand once and let go. The room did not empty for a long time. People sat. Somebody started a pot of coffee at the back. Frank came over and shook my hand without saying anything. So did Dave. So did 6 others I did not know. Ray stood against the back wall the whole time, arms crossed, the same as when I had walked in 3 hours earlier. The only difference was that he was smiling now. The legal part finished faster than I expected. Within 60 days, Eleanor Pace was voted out as president by a paper ballot of 71%. Cynthia Pace resigned the next morning by email. Brad Whitlow resigned that afternoon. The HOA's attorneys at Hartwick and Stowe withdrew the prescriptive easement claim in a 1-page letter unprompted, before the new board even asked. The State Department of Real Estate reopened its file on the HOA's earlier finding and added an addendum that I am told is not yet public, but will be soon. The county sheriff's office issued a brief written statement clarifying that I had never been trespassing and never been the subject of a valid complaint. I framed that one. It sits next to the orange sticker on my office wall. The financial part was quieter. All 4 of the threatened fines and assessments against me, the gate paint, the hay barn, the trespass fine, the per-vehicle pass were formally rescinded by the new board at their first regular meeting. Annie Patterson received a check for $800 and a written apology signed by the new president. 3 other historical fines flagged in the state audit were reimbursed. Dave Ray's did not get the mailbox back, but the new board voted unanimously to pay for the materials and labor to rebuild it. His older boy laid the first stone himself. I did not charge a toll. I signed a recorded easement agreement with the new Pine Hollow board. $1 per year perpetual, recorded at the county. In exchange, the HOA covered Helen Weaver's bill, paid a small audit cost, and agreed in writing never to alter signage structure or surface on parcel 4,471 without my written consent. The HOA's total out-of-pocket for the whole affair came to roughly $18,000 in legal and audit fees. Eleanor Pace personally paid for the attorney letter she had sent on HOA letterhead without proper board authorization. I am told that bill was not small. The social part healed slower than the paper. Eleanor still lives in Pine Hollow. I see her car at the post office sometimes. She does not look at me. People who used to nod at her on the cul-de-sac do not nod anymore. Some of them, I suspect, will eventually. People are like that, and I have lived long enough not to begrudge it. What I did not expect was the pies. Annie Patterson brought one over 2 days after the vote peach lattice top still warm. A week later, somebody named Marcia left a banana bread on my porch with a note that just said, "Thank you." The week after that, an older couple I did not know waved me down at the gas station to introduce themselves and tell me that their daughter, who was 7, had been afraid of Eleanor Pace and that she was not afraid anymore. Ray came by on a Sunday with a bottle of bourbon and walked me into the Cattlemen's Association. He did not call it a thank you. He called it a long, overdue invitation. The 2 HOA signs that had been bolted to my bridge railing came down on a Saturday morning in early spring. The new board did it themselves. They sent 2 men with a wrench who knocked on my front door before they walked down to the bridge and asked if it was all right with me to remove them. I said it was. They handed me both signs in 2 pieces, the zip ties already cut. The new president, a retired engineer named Carl, mailed me a written apology the same week. I kept the signs. They are stacked in the corner of the barn. I have not decided what to do with them yet. The orange sticker is still on my office wall, framed in plain pine beside the deputy's brief written statement. I look at it most mornings while my coffee brews. I do not look at it as a trophy. I look at it as a reminder that there was a Saturday in March when a woman in a linen blazer slapped a piece of plastic on my windshield and informed me that a road I owned was not mine, and that the only thing standing between me and the slow erosion of a thing I had paid for in full was a piece of paper she did not believe existed. The mornings here are quiet now. The cattle are out by 6. The light comes up over the cottonwoods first, then the pasture, then the bridge. There is no sticker on the windshield of my truck. There is no sign zip tied to the railing. There is, on my side of the bridge, a small new plaque the size of a paperback book, Screwed into the wooden post, I dug back into the same hole the second sign came out of. It reads, Parcel 4471. Right-of-way granted by recorded easement. I drove out to the bridge this morning, the way I drive out most mornings, with a thermos of coffee and the dog. I parked at the foot of it and walked to the railing. The sun was just clearing the cottonwoods. A car came down from the Pine Hollow side, slowed at the crossing the way drivers slow on a one-lane bridge, and the man behind the wheel, a neighbor I did not know by name, lifted a hand in greeting. I lifted mine back. The bridge held us both. That was the whole of it.